Yes, guys, you know what time it is. It's your boy Jack here at the Irish Hotspur, and we're going to be delivering you guys a podcast. It's a trio today. It's a front three. Dave is feeling quite unwell. He's going to be battling his best to try to get back to full fitness. But Sonny, as you know from last time, he's going to be with us as many times as he can be. He's an official member of this podcast, and we've decided to go for a good replacement for Dave. I've tried to pick, the best sort of tactical mind that I could find, a guy that really likes to dig into Spurs, and we've been joined by Ash Maddock from Southview Coys. Ash, how are you? How are you this what is it, evening, I guess? I'm now on the West Coast, so it's very early in the morning. It's kind of stupid o'clock, but how are you this evening?
Yeah, I'm cool, man. The weather's been decent of late, but I feel like it's coming to an end. I'm not really excited about it, but it's that time for winter jackets. It's time to put the long johns on.
Mm.
It's that seasonal change, isn't it? So yeah, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. But other than that, I'm good. I'm well. I'm live. I'm kicking. I'm ready to talk about Spurs, bro.
That's good to hear, Ash. And Sonny, like I said, you're going to be joining us regularly, and you'll be getting quite used to my annoying Yank voice on this podcast. But how are you this evening?
Yeah, I'm obviously replacing Dave this week, but I'm not going to do any Irish accents because I think that will just offend the whole of Ireland. So I'll keep that to a minimum. But yeah, as we were saying before in another video we recorded for my channel, lots of positive vibes around Tottenham at the moment. So can't say too many negatives, but I'm sure we'll find something along the way this evening.
And we certainly will, because we're going to be discussing a lot, actually, about our new technical director, JOHAN. And everybody have some doubts and some positives, going into it. But I thought maybe we just sort of warm ourselves up with just sort of and this might come across as random, and I do apologize, but it is our podcast, and, we want to talk about what we want to talk about. And Vicario is going to be brought up once again. You probably keep, asking yourself, why is it that whenever Sonny's on, I seem to love to talk about Vicario? I'm not sure why, but it's just a guy that I'm falling in love with, it seems like, every game. And after watching that Man City game, I just got to say, Vicario, again, looks like one of the best signings of this summer for Spurs. I think David Raya really ended up actually getting away with a couple of pretty bad moments in that Man City game. While I feel like maybe Arsenal, and I don't know, it's hard to say who really deserved the 3 points, but when watching back that game and seeing Man City put Arsenal under pressure, David Raya on a few occasions nearly gave away a goal, and one of them was probably quite lucky to not have given away a goal. Whoever ended up, closing down him on that sort of, pass back, and it ended up getting blocked when he tried to launch it. I mean, that thing went like inches from like going into the back of the net from his own sort of kind of clearance. And we've never seen Vicario, I think, this season, even when put under pressure by various teams like Arsenal or like, Liverpool and whatnot, has not really, been that sketchy, or he hasn't really looked that suspicious of any kind. He looks pretty assured of himself. He makes the right decision. His touch is fine. He seems to know where he's going with it before he even receives it. All those things, I would say, was not noticing with David Raya in that Man City game. He looked pretty petrified when getting the ball back to him. But I'm going to start with you, Sonny, just because, you and I have been talking about Vicario aplenty, and I know it is kind of a random thing to talk about here before we talk about a completely different subject, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on that Arsenal Man City game, and do you feel more justified now with the Vicario signing?
It's just coming back to Mark me though, because one of my
keep
first
grilling
videos
you
on
on
my
it.
channel was we'd made a mistake signing Vicario over Raya. So I'm glad I was wrong. That's all I'm going to say. I'm glad I was wrong. Obviously, David Raya did have a lot of good stuff behind him. He had a good experience at
Yeah.
Brentford, but then again, there were moments I remember in the playoff final against Fulham where he got done by a free kick and he was just all at sea. So he is prone. These goalkeepers who like to play out from the back are prone to more mistakes because they're taking more risks. I mean, look at Onana. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what a howler he's having in his
Yeah.
Man United start to the season. But yeah, Vicario, very happy again. Another good display. Very important saves. Also even like the chance that Elijah Adebayo had, he sort of did make himself big. He's doing all the right things. He dictates the play. I think that's what I like about it. He knows when to slow a game down and then knows where to pop it quickly into your Basuma or your Pedro Porro out on the wing. So I've got to be happy. And yeah, David Raya, maybe it was a bullet dodged, and Aaron Ramsdale's probably getting wrongly benched.
A bullet dodge, Dash? What do you think with the David Raya?
You know what's funny? Like before that game, he was looking suspect.
Yes.
He was looking real nervous, and I felt like if he gets his first pass wrong, he could carry that into the next game.
I agree.
And he did. And literally, he was a nervous wreck. And I think that's what it was. That's the reason why I was getting so many passes wrong. Arteta, he's an overthinker. He does the most just stay calm, my bro. What are you doing? Like, he's ramping with the keepers. He had one keeper, Ramsdale, that was fine, I thought. And then he's gone and switched it up, and he's like, yeah, I want to play out from the back. Ramsdale was doing that. He was doing those pinpoint balls from the back, hitting the fullbacks, the midfield, whatever. And he's gone and said, yeah, you know what? I see what Tottenham are trying to do. I'm going to spite them, and I'm going to buy a keeper. Yeah? Well, guess what? You got egg on your face. How about that? Look at you now. So I'm trying to say, he messed up, man. He was doing the most, and now it's backfired. And now we had the Venom Vicario. Yeah, he's doing bits. For me, I love that the fact he came out from earlier and said that he's really working on playing out from the back. He's working on his first touch. I appreciate that. I respect that. That he's actually putting the work in to get better, to help us up the field. That's the way we play possession football. We act as the third man. We're often in the little triangle between Romero and Van de Ven, and he helps us with getting that ball out. Do you know what I mean? And just as a goalkeeper in general, the saves that he's made this season, like even there was a shot, I think it was like ruled offside or something like by the end, but he did a save when he just flicked his hand out. Don't know if you guys remember that. And just, do you know what I'm saying? I was like, yeah, that's what you buy a goalkeeper for. Forget all that fancy footwork. Your goalkeeper must be a goalkeeper.
No, they have to be able to make a crack save, right, Ash? Like every goalkeeper, still to this day, you still have to have a crack save in you.
You got to finish a dinner. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a shame about Richarlison. There's no one going to talk about that. But I'm just saying, like, as you are designated in a particular position, you need to do what that job requires. And as a goalkeeper, I rate it. Going up for corners and crosses, I still think, like, certain times he punches it. And, like, he's been successful. Don't get me wrong. And I'm nitpicking here, guys. I'm nitpicking. Because I rate him. But I just feel like sometimes he just gets underneath it. He's not super commanding in that box. Like, when he comes to win that ball, I just feel sometimes, he could be a little bit better. If I'm going to be slightly critical. But other than that, as a goalkeeper, I love it.
Is he doing both, though, Ash, better than other keepers around the league? Because you just mentioned that, right? He's playing out from the back and making saves, which Onana isn't doing. Raya isn't doing. Most of the keepers, maybe bar Allison and Ederson, they do one thing pretty well, but they don't usually do the other one well either. They're usually good with their feet, but maybe not good as making saves. And what you want is both. And that's where I think the goalkeeping position in general has actually changed a lot, where now you are asked to be good with your feet, but still you have to be able to make saves, right? And you have to be able to keep your team in it. And it feels like Vicario is actually doing that better than most other keepers around the league right now, where even like an Areola or like a Leno, like those guys aren't even being asked to play out from the back as much as Vicario is. They're actually just being asked to make, really good saves to sort of keep him in it. He's being asked to make good saves to keep us in it, especially in kind of, really dangerous moments that will spring from counterattacks. But then also he's asked to, feed the ball into Basuma quickly, feed the ball into Udogie quickly as well. I think he's doing both at the same time that very few keepers, at least right now, in the first 8 games are actually doing.
And just to add to that, I just think his communication is really good between his backline and feet. But these are things that go over people's heads. Yeah. Like centre back wise, you need your keeper to be commanding, talking up when needed be. So everyone talks about, we need leaderships, we need leaders. That was a big thing like for last season. I feel like he's nailed that down and he's learned English really quickly. I feel like that's one thing I noticed. I was like, wow, this guy can talk better than me.
He's a better goalkeeping leader than Lloris, I'd say. I think I've said that on record as well. Like, even though Lloris was the captain, I never thought he was that commanding as a goalkeeping captain. I for one, am not a big fan of a goalkeeper being a captain, unless it was Casillas or Neuer, because they have got that sort of energy about them. But Lloris never gave me that. Whereas Vicario, I think he's shown a couple of times. I think we've said in the past, haven't we, like about saying to Udogie about the back pass in the North London derby, putting his arm around Romero when the deflection own goal went in. Like, it's those little moments where he's actually being a leader as well, and it just makes a difference. And considering that whole back line is pretty much brand new, like even Romero's like a new person this season. Like, it is impressive what they're all doing back there.
No, definitely. Unless you have any more, mentions of Vicario or David Rea, I'm going to move us on swiftly to the main topic of this evening. I apologize for that rant if it appeared like one, but like I said, I just wanted to have it because I haven't had the opportunity to rant yet again about how much I love Vicario and how concerned I was actually from watching that David Rea performance. I really was actually, felt like, I don't know if I was really proven right because I think I was like a lot of other people a bit worried about the Vicario signing, and it's just shown to be actually an absolute coup, and it's shown to be a brilliant signing. I think after watching David Rea, at least of recent, he has sort of sketched me out, and thankfully he's not our keeper. But let's talk about a man that is going to be bringing in some new signings, and he is going to be in charge of the future of Tottenham Hotspur. It's a new technical director, JOHAN LANGE, over from Denmark. He was previously with FC Copenhagen. We just got him from Aston Villa. I'm going to start with you, Sonny, because you have just put out a video recently on our man JOHAN LANGE, so please, everybody, go check it out on Sonny Talk Spurs. What are your initial impressions of him? Like, what did you find out about him? Are you impressed, worried, neutral, kind of, when he was signed?
I obviously had to do a bit of research doing that video because, didn't know a lot about him in the depth. Obviously, I knew about the signings he's made. And like most clubs, there are signings that are quite good and there are signings that are not so good. But even the signings that were not so good, to me, they were still quite impressive. Like, he managed to somehow get Philip Coutinho out of Barcelona. That was quite a statement signing. They got Danny Ings out of Southampton, a bit out of nowhere. Even though those two, for example, didn't work out, still quite, as I say, statement signings. But then again, some of his others, like Boubacar Kamara on a free, linked with from Marseille. I think he was linked with like Manchester United and teams like that.
Yeah.
Diego Carlos from Sevilla, highly rated, Europa League winner and stuff like that. He was Ollie Watkins, scouted from Exeter City. These names are just like really good signings, and we're showing now under like a better manager from Steven Gerrard and Dean Smith, they're becoming good. A bit like how we did with Paratici from Conte to Postecoglou. We're now getting the best out of some of these signings. So there is that. And then obviously I did a bit of research into his background and how he sort of scouts players. And it is stat-based signings that he goes for. And what have we just done this summer? Stat-based signings. Mickey van der Ven, Valise. These were signings that were not sort of, we went and, did the hard digging and sort of for these players could become good. They're sort of doing all right. They are putting up some good numbers, but maybe a bigger team with a better coach, they can sort of explode. So you hope that he can somehow find some hidden gems. And my prediction is, and I think I've said this a couple of times, like I think where Tottenham sort of sit now in the pecking order, we are not going to pay the money that Chelsea are paying, that Manchester United are paying, that City are paying, that even Arsenal are paying. I don't see us slapping down £100 million on a player anytime soon. But what we can do is we've still got a bit of something about us that
Outthink the other ones. Yeah.
We can outthink the Brentfords and the Brightons, who have not really got the clout, which sounds really cringe saying as a football club, but they are doing stat-based signings. But maybe if we go for a player, for example, Brennan Johnson, Brentford wanting Brendan Johnson, we come in and go, they are 45 million and, blow them out the water. So that is sort of where I am positive. Obviously, not all of his signings have been amazing, but then again, I can't think of many
no one ever
sporting
gets it
directors
perfect.
or managers who, did a 100% success rate. And obviously, it's understandable why he's left Villa because, they've now got Monchi. Monchi worked with Emery. They're basically like, tied at the hip, partners in crime. So I understand it. But yeah, I'm more positive than I am negative about the appointment, I'd say.
Did we need to sign a technical director, Ash? Like, was that something that just ended up needing to happen, even if you're a big Paratici fan? Like, just for the face of it, like, is it a good look for the club, to just at least sign somebody? Did you feel like it needed to happen, even if you're not a big fan of Lang?
You know what? Because I was kind of on that wave. Do we need a technical director? But Ange came out and said he wants to focus on coaching. He wants to concentrate on the football side of
Developing.
things. And rather get someone else doing all the looking out for that, trying to sign the player, blah, 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 all the legwork. He would prefer a sporting director or some type of technical director to do all of that. He says he knows about players. Can you get this position for me? Go and get them. All right, cool. This is what we found. This is the data, because he said he likes data analytics as well. So it's like sounding like a marriage in heaven. And if Ange is for it, I'm going to be typical and say so am I, because up till now, from what I've seen of the CV, he hasn't gone too wrong, especially with Celtic, in terms of finding hidden gems like in the world, in terms of Japan and Australia, etc., and leagues that we wouldn't normally look at. He manages to find those players that, and if he could tell that to a data-led um, analytical director to go and find those players, then I think the two of them can work, because it's all about partnerships, isn't it? It's all about
Hmm.
relationship. And so I think Ange always said, look, there's no player that's going to come into this building that I don't approve of. And I think that's key. Do you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So the fact that we've got, like, Scott Munn's gone out there and he's looked for a director that's got previous with working with data analytics, that to me sounds sensible. Where I was a bit questionable was that, why is Paratici still in a what do you call it? A
Consultancy role kind of thing.
Advisory.
Yeah.
yeah, why? Why? Because from what I understand, he's not going to have as much power as Paratici had. So I don't know. Is Levy really rating Fabio super high and saying, "Listen, I think I need this guy around for a little bit longer," and that's the reason why he hasn't given the full power to Big Lange. You know what I'm trying to say? So I don't know. It's a few question marks. I've got a few question marks there.
Hmm. Could
But
this
going
just be
back
for the face of it? Could this just be then a signing just for, like on the face, like PR, sort of like make it
seriously,
look like Spurs are onto something. They know what they're doing, but
listen,
you're suggesting
I'm here for the
Paratici is
X
still the
Files.
guy they trust more.
I'm here for the outer limits, the X Files, the conspiracy. I'm here for it. So if that's the case, like, because Paratici, let's not get it twisted. What a
Levy loves
job.
him.
Yeah, half our squad, I'll say more than half our squad, that's Paratici's work right there. Do you understand? In terms of like structuring, he's got a big part of that. And so my criticism for the Don, was maybe his appointments for coaches. I don't think he got that too well right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But in
Hmm.
terms of like talent ID and contacts, maybe that's what we're doing. He's using his black book, a bit like Baldini's black book, going into Italian markets, because that market was quite cheap and we were quite successful in terms of getting players from there. So I just think all the components, see what Brighton are doing. They've got so many different departments working all in one system. Everybody's roles clear. As long as the roles are clear and there's no egos
Maybe that's
involved.
what it is, surely. I think maybe Paratici will do an advisory role and maybe go like, I've spotted this player and sort of do like Southern Europe, and then Lang's looking at like Eastern Europe and like
I'm
it's like
saying,
a bit of it's a bit, maybe it's more we're gonna like develop a scouting network or something
that's
like
what I
that
was
because
gonna say.
and then also apparently Lang's got experience with the youth academy
Yep.
where at the moment, I mean, look how good our youth academy's been. Maybe he takes that over and
Yeah.
sort of scouts players that go straight in, a bit like how Chelsea do. They sign a player and then put them straight in the youth academy and develop that a bit more because we are crying out for another one of our own, aren't we?
Did we sign
Exactly.
this guy, Sonny? Like the same question I asked Ash. Did we just sign him just to make it look good on paper? It looks like Spurs know what they're doing, sort of thing. But maybe if you were to put on your tinfoil hat, they actually still trust Paratici more, or they kind of still see Paratici as the main guy. What do you make of that?
It's hard. It's hard to know because obviously, even though we're all on a crest of a wave and we're all very positive about Tottenham, we still are not all happy about Daniel Levy. From
Mm-hmm.
last season, it sort of has gone a bit quiet, but your average Spurs fan is still a bit.
Yeah.
It's probably still Levy out.
Yeah.
Uh, I feel like they've launched this advisory board, haven't they? They've done all these different sort of measurements to sort of change bits and bobs at the club, but I just can't really understand maybe where it fits in. Maybe, obviously he doesn't start till the 1st of November. Maybe from then it'll be a bit clear. At the moment, we are all speculating what he's going to be, where he's going to fit. Because at the end of the day, we're still confused about, does Joe Lewis own us? Is Daniel
Mm-hmm.
Levy the majority shareholder? Is it what's it? Does he do the day-to-day running? No one really knows, and that's the problem because all these roles are all a bit jargony and they're all technical sporting directors, and no one really knows. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like at your work, who's like what you need, like the map of who reports into who and who goes into what. Because at the moment it is a bit confusing, but you just hope. Like I wonder, like for example, maybe I need to do a bit more research how it works in the summer for Villa because obviously Monchi was there in the summer, and then Lang was there as well. So was the signing of Musa Diaby,
Mm-hmm.
Tielemans, Pau Torres, were they his doing, or was that just Monchi?
Yeah.
So that would be quite interesting because maybe it would work similar to that because obviously with Paratici being an advisor, surely he's not technically, an employer of the club. He's sort
Yeah.
of an external like freelance, isn't he? So he could probably go and tout players to whoever he wants. But yeah, I think from the 1st of November we might know a bit more.
I feel like Lang has actually had some experience, from what I can tell, in having people sort of work alongside him or work even above him. It looked like that guy Purslow, or whatever his name was, who's like the CEO
Oh
of
yeah.
Aston Villa. Apparently, he even brought in some of those signings that maybe even apparently Lang wasn't even the biggest fan of. I forget which one, but one of the signings they actually made Aston Villa wasn't really even one of his own. I think it was like Emiliano Martinez or something like that wasn't really his original signing. Even Ollie Watkins, I don't think, was one of his original signings. And also Danny Ings, which ended up actually being a failure, I think, of a signing for Aston Villa, apparently wasn't even Lang's. Lang and Purslow actually sort of argued or kind of disagreed, apparently, to The Athletic. I read an article about it saying that they sort of disagreed over that transfer. And that's, in a way, almost a good thing, because I feel like there are going to be so many cooks in the kitchen at Spurs right now, with Paratici, with maybe some of the guys that are still left around that Paratici kind of hired. I'm not sure what Steinson's still doing, or some of the other guys like Holding and whatnot. Maybe they're still around. I can't remember, but there are plenty of cooks in the kitchen right now in the Spurs recruitment department. And then Paratici is a very opinionated guy. We've heard that he's somebody that sort of works late, sends people emails, like ridiculous hours about, what thing they could be working on, sort of demands a lot from others. And I think Lang has actually had some experience in this regard. Apparently, even at Wolves, he sort of was more of a behind the scenes kind of guy, had a lot of people kind of working above him and around him. And he's done quite well, apparently, in kind of being a guy that can, have his own opinion and have his own sort of strong way of doing things, but also is willing to listen to others. At least that was the case at Aston Villa. He wasn't totally in charge. He wasn't the guy that everybody listened to. There were actually people above him that ended up even making transfers and decisions above him that he had to sort of live with and work with. And that could be a good sign, because we know Daniel Levy is going to play always a major hand in the transfers. Scott Munn is now sort of kind of the new sort of a delegator, or at least maybe one of the mouthpieces of Levy. So there's going to be a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and there's going to be a lot of influence, a lot of voices, and you're going to have to be somebody that's okay with that. Because we know certain directors of football, they don't want to be questioned. They don't want to have anybody sort of step in their way or tell them what they can and shouldn't be doing. But it looks like Lang, whether he even likes it or not, has actually had experience in that regard. That actually helps, I think, for us. What do you guys think? If to the question of too many cooks in the kitchen, this guy has experience with that.
Do you think it's a good thing that maybe the more bodies in front of Levy, the less he's got control or contribution towards?
I think there's more of a structure. Surely
So,
there's more of a structure going down this way, because when we look at it, the other summer he was negotiating the Jed Spence deal, and look how that went. We got absolutely that lasted
months.
well longer than it needs to. And even when I look at like how we've been set up over the last so many years, we had Paul Mitchell, we had Steve Hitchin, we had who's the Italian who left? Was it Gabbiadini?
Gabbiadini,
Or something like that. Like we had all these like random people who were sort of floating around. So maybe I'm hopeful that there might be a bit more of a structure to all of this than just random people who seem to just be like touting players at us. But it's just confusing, especially where it's the Paratici question. Where does he sort of fit into all this? Especially when people are very positive about him at the moment.
Too many cooks in the kitchen, Ash, you're saying, and that's actually a good thing, and it would actually...
It could be a positive. But the thing is as well, looking at John Lange when he came in, Johan Lange, Aston Villa weren't doing too well. Were they not like relegation?
I think they just got promoted again or something like that. Like, I think, wasn't it 2018-19 they got relegated or something like that?
I think he was there because his first summer was when they started Matty Cash and Ollie Watkins and players like that.
I don't think Watkins was doing too well until Emery came along. Am I wrong in saying that?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he was doing too well. So like,
he was okay under Dean Smith, but then it was because they had the dilemma of who plays through the middle, Ings or Watkins, and then Watkins got sort of chucked on the wing, didn't he? So
yeah, and then he wasn't really kind of thriving until Ings kind of got pushed out. Then they put Watkins up top, and that was obviously in the Emery when he came in. I think Emery got the best out of the players that were there, but for the large part, I thought they were underperforming before Emery got there. So I look at some of the signings, and I'm like, were they good signings, or was it because of the coach that kind of improved them and got them up to another level? You could see it on both sides. You see what I'm trying to say? Like, I'm like, oh, was Cash even in the team like that? Was Cash really performing as well on that right hand side? There's a couple question marks. I can't lie. But overall, like looking at it now, it looks like they were great signings. But when he first did them, it's one of those things where when Paratici was here, I could say a similar thing because when we first had a few of the signings, they weren't instantly like they didn't hit the ground running.
Or
It
even
took a
instantly in the
while.
first team, like Pop Matasar or Udogi, right? They weren't even in the first team straight away. We had to wait.
There you go. So it's a mixture of things where I'm like, yeah, maybe. Like it depends how you look at it. Half full, half empty.
Mm-hmm.
I would prefer to go half full, and be optimistic about this. Because like you said, this guy, it makes sense. He's doing the data analytics, and then you've got someone else that's what they do, data analytics, and they're marrying together. And so there's a few players across Europe. If we're going down that road, that is the Brighton road. And you know how we felt about Vicario. I know we spoke about him already, but before everyone was like, who? Who's that? And look how well it turned out. And that was due to some of the data analytics. Do you know what I mean? So I'm for it. I'm for it. I'm hoping that this can work in our favor and we just stick to our guns. And that way also we don't overpay for players like a Richarlison. We had to pay through the nose for him, didn't we?
But that was also Daniel Levy, though, getting involved once again, correct? Right? That was Daniel Levy saying, oh,
Probably
this is
because it was
such a
an English club,
deal.
weren't
Like,
it?
this is a chance in a lifetime. And we don't even know if that was even Paratici that even wanted Richarlison. We were told more it was kind of Levy's thing.
This is what I'm saying to you. So
So there's now
maybe
less of a chance of that happening, technically, with Johan
exactly
Lang coming in?
this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. So the less Levy's involved, the kind of more cooks ahead of him, the less he's got to reach over the club. So
That's the thing about Levy as well. Levy, I said this in my video. Levy is a great owner when it comes to business. Look at the securing, Tottenham's now stadium at the
Yeah.
Euro 2028, NFL, Beyonce concerts, like all fantastic because it's revenue streams. Even if we haven't
Hmm.
seen it all go into the club, but again, in the summer we were the third highest spender, so we can't really moan about spending this summer. But maybe keep Levy there. You deal with that, like Ed Woodward. Like Ed Woodward, amazing at Man United of securing deals
Correct.
out of. They had a sponsor for everything, I think, at one stage. But don't get involved in footballing matters because I think Johan Lang is more of a football person than Levy has ever been because he seems to know, like, he seems to understand, like, what a club needs, maybe in recruitment policy and like
Hmm.
these stat-based signings. And I don't know if, as we say, every time Levy's got involved in a negotiation, it does get a bit messy. The only thing I did read, I read the Football.London Football.London article about Johan Lang. There is something he's very not good at, and that's apparently selling players. And we are
Yes.
still, thinking about Dyer, thinking about the Lloris. He sold Grealish as well. He was there when
Hmm.
Grealish was sold. So he got 100 million for Grealish. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I don't know if
But
that's good or bad or.
let's transition to that, though. I did have a question on that about
All
sort
right.
of part of the jobs that he has to do when coming into Spurs, right? And one of them is actually outgoings. Like, there have been a lot of incomings this summer, but we didn't do as great of a job actually in the outgoings department. Felt like that's where we kind of messed up a bit more. And so it looks like he is going to have to, as much as every director of football wants to bring in shiny new players, I think actually more of his role is actually going to be to get rid of a lot of players so that we can make space to bring in new ones. And you look at the starting 11, yeah, maybe you can make some signings to, crack into the team, but for the most part, there aren't many new starting 11 signings that you need to make. It's more squad signings and then kind of rejuvenating that whole squad and bringing in, kind of new faces or make room for kind of new faces from the academy and whatnot to come in. And you're right, Lang did not do that great of a job actually at Aston Villa when brought in there. He didn't have, to be fair, a lot of real talents. He actually had something similar to Spurs, where it's pretty much mostly dead weight and mostly dead wood that he had to get rid of. And that's hard because you're sort of selling somebody that most people know really isn't worth much value. You have to sort of find a way to get the best of the deal. You have to also still be a shrewd negotiator about it. And he's shown that he's not as good as somebody like an Ed Woodward was, for example, right? Woodward was able to get, what is it, like Barcelona to pay 100 cajillion million for Philippe Coutinho, Van Dijk as well. They did, a decent transfer for. They just, I believe some other players they sold on for like a lot of money at Liverpool at the time. Ed Woodward did a pretty good job actually in the outgoings department. And when you look at somebody like Lang, I don't think he had nearly as many talented players to get rid of, but he did, apparently according to Ali Gold as well as others, kind of struggled a little bit in being able to get off a lot of the sort of or get out a lot of the sort of the unwanted players in Villa. And Spurs have a similar situation. I think Eric Dyer, somebody that has decided to stuck around, despite, him being shown the door. You look at other players, that's been the case with Lloris, even kind of, I feel like Brandon Austin, Alfie Whiteman. I mean, Spurs have 5 goalkeepers in a season with no Europe. I mean, it's the luxury or the beautiful life of being the 5th choice keeper must be brilliant, at Spurs right now, because you're never going to see a single minute. But this is something that he's going to have to come into. He's going to have to get rid of players, and he's going to have to sort of work on something still that perhaps he struggled with. And Paratici, I think, was a little bit better at it than maybe we gave him credit for, because when you look at how this summer went, we really did struggle in getting rid of guys. Whereas I think in the previous season, while we did loan out a bunch of players, we at least kind of got rid of them, and we at least kind of got them out of the squad for the most part. So I do feel like I am a little worried in the outgoings department, because these guys that we have around the team, they are pretty stubborn. They are holding on to that check as much as they can. So how can Johan Lang sort of force him out in whatever means necessary? And he hasn't shown that he has the skills to do that yet.
For me, sorry to cut you.
No,
I
I'm
just
done.
think literally he's come in the right time, because a lot of the contracts are on its last legs. You've got Eric Dyer, that's in his last year of his contract. You've got Lloris seeing out the end of his contract. So already you've got 2 players out the door for summer, and it's not going to cost the club too much. So, like we were talking about the summer just gone about, we're going to have to rip up contracts, and that is a cost to the club. You're going to have to pay someone out. That's going to cost you to pay that player out. Whereas this summer here, or summer coming up, he hasn't really got to do that. He can kind of dodge that bullet. Obviously, with Perisic, he's got an injury. So we're able to possibly find a young player and get a winger in, because he's out technically. He's out. That's him done. I don't know how many years he had left on. Probably like a year left on his contract. So I think that's another job that he has, another headache he hasn't got to worry about. So, and if that is the policy that we're looking for, young players that are hungry, and we're data-led driven, I think it's going to be exciting times for us. It's going to be exciting times, because there's so many players out there that now we know what we need and what department, especially for Ange. He knows he likes wingers to hug the touchline. So now we're looking for wingers that hug the touchline. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Or he might want a winger that could come inside at times and shoot. That could be a piece that we're missing on the left-hand side or on the right-hand side. He might think, we need to upgrade on that, or push someone like a Kulusevski, or even a Johnson if he's on that side, or a Richard, whoever it is. Do you know what I mean? Or he might think Valise is good enough for what we need, so maybe this January we might not look for a striker. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But a lot of those questions are being answered for Lange already, so he's not having to do too much. Because
not a dumpster fire he's walking into or anything where he has 20,000 things to do immediately. In comparison to maybe Paratici, right? Would you say Paratici inherited a much different? And
there you go. There you go.
There's a question on that, save for later, Ash, and I'll get to you first on that, because that's what I think, right? Lang is sort of coming in here, and like Spurs are kind of in a bit of a groove. Like, you don't want to rock the boat too much. So basically, then Sonny, does that mean like he can't really, as much as every director of football wants to bring in incomings, would you say he's going to have to focus more on outgoings, and those are almost as important for Spurs as the incomings this season?
That's the thing. Ash sort of said most of our outgoings are going to be sold by themselves, contracts running down. And I can imagine we've already got a plan for January. I mean, a lot of Spurs fans are speculating, like some people want an extra midfielder because of AFCON and because of Bentancur not knowing where he's going to be with his recovery. People want another striker. I just don't see that happening. I think the market's already limited anyway, and you're going to be having to pay in stupid amounts to get, say, an Ivan Toney, or even an Ollie Watkins. So I don't know. It's really hard to judge what we need. Maybe we still need another defender. That's probably you'd say, because young Ash Phillips, as good as he looks, it's a lot of pressure to then chuck him in the first team, and obviously Eric Dyer's probably going to leave. So it's hard to know what we would do in, say, a January. Maybe Lang's just been secured because it seems like the fight for directors of football is getting quite heated. We looked in the summer when we were trying to secure certain managers, like Nagelsmann was a bit tricky because he wanted a DOF. Like it was a bit of a weird situation of like, and we then left it and got Ange anyway. So they're just complex situations in modern football. I don't remember ever having these conversations back in the day of it was just
Never.
your manager and that was it. And like they usually said yay or nay. Oh, or they were either in charge of the signings or they weren't
Yeah.
in charge of the signings. And you just got to look at Poch. Even Poch wasn't in charge of the signings. He literally went a whole calendar year without having a signing.
Hmm.
So it's just we just need some more like it all to be laid out in front of us of how this is going to work, what is this going to look like. And I think as well some Tottenham fans may have to lower their expectations, because I had a comment on one of my videos being like, we need to sign Eze, we need to sign and two other players, and I was like, that's like 250 millions worth of play, like that's not happening, like especially in this modern model. I can't imagine us really, I can imagine like picking up a player here and there, like we signed Maddison for such a good deal,
Yeah.
but we may see a few like testers here and there of some signings that are going to be plucked out of different leagues, or maybe Johan Langer's come in and sort of he's going to come in and start negotiating with Premier League teams again and gone, forget about Levy, forget about 20 years of haggling and hardness and rebuff bids and all that sort of stuff, not paying up 2 extra million. I'm here now to do these negotiations. That would be the ideal. Even as a joke, that would be the ideal thing, because there's something very evident that when it comes to even dealing with top 6 sides, no one sells to us, do they? Like I
Mm.
can't remember the last player who came to us. Like even you look at, in the summer we were linked with Conor Gallagher and Trevor Chalobah for Chelsea. The last player to go from Chelsea to Tottenham on a permanent transfer was Gus Poyet in the 90s. So it just doesn't happen. And I don't know if that's because of the rivalry or because of Levy or whatever, but I mean, I don't really want Chelsea players anyway, so I'm not really sure why I'm making the point.
I think, yeah, what are you about to say, Ash? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely we're looking for players that from a different market. I know we've been linked with a player called Antonio. Oh, I forgot his surname, just got out of my head. But basically, he's a young player from Belgium. Oh, he's actually Norwegian. Plays in the Norwegian
Oh
squad.
yeah, I've seen this. Yeah.
Very talented young kid. Extremely tricky. Some might say, we might have that in the Brian Hill already, but this guy looks a bit more stronger on the
Hmm.
ball. 18 years old. And I like that because you're kind of bedding in young players that have international experience. They may not be at the biggest club, but then they're looking at the attributes that we may need, rather than going for, like you said, someone that's established like Eze, because Palace got Eze from QPR. That's how we need. They got Elise from Reading. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So
That's a good
we need
point.
to start doing that too, where we're getting a player that's maybe got some experience, young, but they've done it at a certain level. But we're going to take a gamble and do like a Brighton or a Palace or even a Brentford and
That's the
start
thing.
nurturing.
You
So
got to
we
do
need
that.
to kind of, like you said, lower our expectations and think, yeah, you know what? Maybe we should just trust the DOF that he's going to bring in the right talent, and trust the talent ID as well, the data analytics in that
Is
sense.
part of, though, being a good director of football or being a good technical director specifically for Spurs, specifically for Tottenham, you have to be a shrewd negotiator, right? You have to be able
Yeah,
to, even if you're going after a big player, you have to get him for 20 million less than what, every other team would probably pay for. Or if you're going for a small player and he's, maybe a talent for the future, you still have to, get him for 5 million, 6 million less than, what Daniel Levy or maybe others. You just,
right.
that's part of being, you have to be a shrewd negotiator. So Lang is going to have to be good in that department, wouldn't
Uh,
he?
For me, sorry to cut you again. For
No,
me, it's a thing where, like, I think for most fans, price isn't the issue. For me, it's about getting it done early
but it is for
and
Spurs,
making
Ash.
sure. Well, yeah, but I mean, as in terms of we need to get that, because we've got money. We're
Yeah,
acting like we ain't got money. What's all these concerts for then? Like, what's the point of hosting these Euros, and like, what is the point of the stadium? I don't want to get into that, but I'm just saying
I know what
we
you
act
mean.
like we haven't got money when we actually do, and I just feel like I think with fans they'd rather get players in the door in early rather than what happened with Pedro Porro, and we
Mm,
waited the whole window for him to come in, and then obviously he plays at the end. Well, in February he plays. He missed the North London derby where we could have probably used him and he could have bedded in a bit quicker. And then who knows? We might have had a few points off the back of that. Do you know what I mean? Instead of playing like Emerson Royale or whoever was playing right back at the time. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So like it's those things I think frustrate fans. And if deals can get done quicker, and the DOF is a part of negotiating those deals from early. Like certain deals that get done, for example, Van Dijk, that might have been done. Obviously, it was done in January, but the first day of the window in January, you've got Van Dijk coming through the door. But the groundwork was done ages ago, and I'm hoping that obviously the 1st of November, he's really got his eye on certain.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they don't start on the 1st of November. I'm pretty sure, like Scotland, they're officially going to start on that day, but they're doing the
That's when they walk into the office, but
Exactly.
he's working from home, I think, at the moment.
Exactly. He's got the MacBook out, he's got the MacBook Pro. He's doing his bits and bobs. So
he's probably in actually the Tottenham cafe right now, actually, where they got the free Wi-Fi.
King, that's what he's doing.
Getting the latte. Oh, well, maybe not. But yeah, but just literally, just get the ball rolling from early. I don't want to see all of this late business at the end of the window, and we needed to play because at the end of the day, it's points dropped, and that could be crucial. That's what you need in January. If we're desperately looking for a certain position because they're injured or we're not performing in a certain level because that player isn't good enough in that position, i.e. left wing, right wing, or whatever you think is not performing, then we need to have that done early.
Sonny.
Like today, not yesterday. We need it today.
Sonny, Paratici was able to bring in talents like Sarr, Udogie, Bentancur for all under 20 million euros each. Can Lang pull off something like that? That's what Ash was talking about, right? Getting in signings early, but also signings that look like on paper. I mean, wow, how did you manage to get that sort of talent, for that type of money and that type of coin? Can he pull off similar signings to that, do you think?
Well, I mean, like, I was just talking about transfers earlier. Like, some of the prices he was playing for some of those players weren't too astronomical. Boubacar Kamara for a free is just like, I know, don't get me wrong, he hasn't had to pay a fee, but he's also been part of the persuasiveness of trying to bring that player in.
Yeah, he had to convince him.
Ollie Watkins was about the problem is I've seen all these prices in euros, so I feel like Ollie Watkins was about 30 something euros. Like they're nothing too crazy, but I feel like even like Tielemans on a free in the summer, Diaby, obviously we don't know how much influence he had in the summer signings, but I think Villa did well to still sign some of those players. Like he's obviously done something well to persuade those players. Obviously, if they don't work out, they don't work out. But I think the initial legwork is still good. It's even like some of Paratici's signings. We could still a lot of them have hit the ground running. But you could look at maybe Richarlison. We don't know how much influence he had over him, or Emerson Royale. I think we sort of don't know how to treat Emerson Royale at the moment because he's a bit of a comedy actor, isn't he, with all of his posting and of his the birth of his baby and stuff like that. But so it is tricky to sort of know were those signings good. It said like we were saying earlier with the managers and that, but that's what's quite weird. You can draw a lot of comparison between Paratici and Lang, so maybe they'll be the perfect match in heaven.
A lot of his sort of under 20 million signings, I actually feel like I'm not very impressed by. Morgan Sanson, for example, he brought in for 15 million. That didn't really prove to be a great transfer. Bertrand Traore, as talented as he's always been, and I think started in the Chelsea academy. He's not exactly, been able to make it through. And then you look at guys I think, which one too? Danny Ings, he brought in for 30 million. You look at Luca Digne, I think is a fine player, but he bought
he's
for...
He's good again now, isn't he?
Yeah, but then they still brought in Alex Moreno, the following season, and they also brought in Ludwig Augustinsson, that guy too. So I'm a bit confused, with some of the signings there. And then I look at maybe, guys like Leander Dendoncker, he brought in him for 15 million. I mean, he's a fine Premier League player, but is that really worth, 15 million when Pop Matasar costs practically the same and Bentancur only costs a few million more too? Some of those signings I do feel like I am a bit skeptical about. And this is where some Villa fans kind of came out and said, this was in an article in The Athletic, that a lot of Villa fans described him as, a really good director of football to help them, kind of surge back to where they belong, maybe more towards those European places. But they did say he had nearly as many misses as he did hits. And when I sort of look back at, the 3 seasons that he was there, not including this most recent one with Monchi and Diaby and those guys, if you look at the 3 seasons he was there before Monchi, depending on your interpretation, you could probably say he did have about as many hits as he did misses. Whereas Paratici, I wouldn't say that's the case. I think Paratici actually had more hits now on kind of, the hindsight of it than he really did misses. Even when you look at Paratici's first season, I think his misses were Brian Hill. You'd probably say maybe Galini as well. But then really apart from that, it's not too many. And then the following season, I think the ones that were maybe misses were like Richarlison and Jed Spence, but we sort of just spoke about those guys maybe being more on the Daniel Levy side of things. But regardless, you still gotta, I think be fair about it. It just feels like I think he looks good, Lang. He doesn't look terrible, but in comparison to maybe Paratici, I would say he's not been actually as successful or nearly as brilliant in sort of the
Do
actual price for quality.
do we
Basically
think?
saying step down.
But do we think like sometimes when a manager like goes to a different club and gets a different output? So say I'm trying to think of a manager off the top of my head. Maybe Unai Emery was at Arsenal, didn't work out, goes to Villa, starts cooking. If Johan Lang maybe comes to Spurs and gets maybe a bit more freedom,
Yeah.
a bit more budget, maybe it's a bit more of a match.
But he's
Than
not
what
walking
he's
into
had
a
to deal
dumpster
with.
fire either, right? Isn't that a good thing that and when he
Yeah,
came into
maybe
Villa, he
it's
had
all laid
so
out in
much
front
he
of
had to
him.
do. He had so much at Villa he had
Yeah.
to do. He had to improve the academy. He had to get them fighting up in the European places again. He had to get a bunch of outgoings going. Baratici had the same thing. He had to improve the academy. He had to get a bunch of incomings in, had to clear out the squad, had to do a bunch of things. And Lang, similar sort of circumstances, and it's never going to be pretty. You're going to get some decisions wrong. You're going to end up maybe having guys go above your head, on a decision. Like I think that's what happened to him in the Danny Ings scenario. And that also happened with Paratici, I think, with Jed Spence and with Richarlison. Daniel Levy ended up kind of going over his head on that one, and that's all part of being, I guess, a director of football and being able to handle, that type of relationship. But he did go into a very bad situation at Villa, and for the most part, got them to where they kind of wanted to be and where they maybe more or less deserved to be. It's just still, though, you kind of think if you were to compare two directors of football inheriting kind of disaster situations, I don't know. I think Paratici almost did a better job in kind of the two short seasons that he was there. He's actually there for less time than actually I think Lang was.
I mean, in terms of players and culture and identity, he was the one like getting the buses branded, wearing them wear Hugo Boss suits. In terms of like the academy, he got them all like structured up in that sense. And I feel like eventually you got it. He's like, right, you know what? Tottenham are not Juventus. We're not a win now club. We need to kind of change the identity, but in a different way. And I feel like that's where it kind of clicked for Paratici. Obviously, it came at the wrong time with the whole criminal charges. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, we haven't spoke about that, but it's just unfortunate.
Lang's a better human, maybe. That's what we haven't.
Lang maybe doesn't have a black book of bad dealings. Maybe not as much.
Look, on the crosses, there was criminals alongside Jesus, apparently. So, who am I to judge? Do you know what I mean? We've all done something bad in our past. I'm pretty sure. We've probably taken a pencil we shouldn't have, or But it is what it is. At the moment, I just think with Lange is different. Obviously, he came and he was trying to get that club from A to B in a different way. Do you know what I'm saying? So you've got two different styles of coaching, directors of football. And then also with Lange, I think that he was an actual coach, wasn't he? He was a failed coach.
Yes.
So I think his understanding of football, again, is slightly different to what Paratici is. I know Paratici has links, which is ideal for a DOF. He's got respect in the game and people know him, which is also important. But equally, I feel it's important to have known the game, like actually coach and look.
Correct.
Look, you know what you're looking for in a player. So that's how you're able to scout for him, even through the data analytics. Because obviously data gives you an idea of what the player should be and what they are. But having that knowledge of seeing someone on the grass is slightly different to looking at numbers and, drawing out for a player. So there's some pluses and there's some minuses, I think, for both directors of football. One coming from Juventus, I said, and coming from a win now kind of culture, but then had to switch it up. One coming from slightly lower, obviously came from Copenhagen and had Aston Villa was his big break. Now is his chance to prove himself again at Tottenham. And I kind of like that because I see us Spurs, even though we're top of the league, by the way. I don't know if you guys knew, but currently first. Just thought I'd throw that out there. But yeah, basically, I kind of like it when we're written off. So we've got a coach that's written off, not written off, but he was seen as a...
downplayed.
Yeah, it's downplayed a lot, you know what I mean? He was kind of compared to that TV show, that American show. I can't remember what it's called, man. American coach. UK show, sorry, with an American coach.
Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso, yeah.
That guy. So yeah, he was compared to that kind of guy.
Smells potential.
Yeah, and then obviously Spurs were labelled Spursy, and still till now, we've only played 8 games, so everyone's waiting for our downfall. Even like the media are setting us up to kind of have a downward trajectory, do you know what I mean? And even still like when Arsenal obviously got the deflection, they got the win against City. You know, they made their own luck. But when we score 10 men against Luton, we were lucky. Or Liverpool VAR, we're lucky. Do you know what I mean? Even to our own, some of our own fan base, we're so I don't mind all of this type of kind of underdog kind of belly, like nobody really knows about Lange like that. I think it's that time to prove himself, and I think, like I said before, Ange has the final words. And so if he looks at a player that Lange brings forward,
Good
and he
point.
thinks, I kind of like that player, yeah, you know what, bring him in. I think that's where it lays with. It lays with Ange at the end of the day. So, like, I'm happy for the appointment, and I'm happy that he's got someone in that's going to do the legwork for him. But let's not get it twisted. Like, it's Big Ange running things right now.
There's a former kind of colleague of Johan Lang who is kind of would probably support what Ash has just said there, Sonny. He said it was a clever decision by Aston Villa to hire Johan because he knows the process of developing a football club from the inside out. So basically, he understands kind of the macro, the macro big level of things at a club to a very micro sort of level as well. He kind of understands the whole stages, the whole process from A to B. Is that a good thing, actually, that he's been in multiple positions at a football club before?
I think that is really good. I just saw as well, and I was looking at his Wikipedia in 2012-13. He was Wolves' assistant coach,
Yeah.
which feels very random on the
He
CV.
was actually the
But yeah,
talent ID, I think, for Wolves at the time. He's sort of an assistant
really
coach,
as
but
well.
really kind of more like a talent identification kind of guy. So
I
he's
think
had a variety of different roles.
I just think like I think that it's just strings to your bow, and you just think by adding him to the Tottenham system, you hope that's a string to our bow as well as a football club, and I see this. The problem is Tottenham do this to me all the time. I'm just hopeful now that we're building something a bit better than we've seen in the past with this like stat based outlook and a manager who we can all get behind, and Scott Munn seems to be doing a good job as well. So they all seem to be clicking at the moment, but obviously nothing's gone wrong, and the Levy out brigade are not as loud as have they were last season, but obviously nothing's gone bad yet. So it is going to be interesting as the season goes on and how it all works out. Obviously, a lot of what he'll be doing is a bit behind the scenes in the transfer window as well. So it's really hard to predict what's really going to happen. Obviously, you just hope we're backed. You hope we spend a bit in January to maybe pick up some players that we need to push us over the line. Especially with there's now a bit of an expectation that Tottenham will get top four now, and it's like maybe hold your horses a little bit. We don't, we've still got 30 odd games to play. Like it's a marathon, not a sprint, and we probably will need something extra to get over the line and secure like as high as possible finish. So yeah, you just hope it all clicks, it all works out well, and we can continue riding the wave.
Random follow up, Sonny. We know that in the past, Paratici used to sort of kind of come out and sort of explain, some of the signings or explain sort of the direction of the club. Johan Lang, in his whole time at Aston Villa, pretty much never addressed the fans or ever really said anything publicly of any kind, mostly because that wasn't his job. I think it was someone else that was actually more in charge of that. I think it was that Purslow guy that was more in charge of that.
Yeah.
But apparently he has been described as a very sort of quiet, confident but quiet, sort of guy that isn't always going to cut across people or anything like that. Kind of maybe a bit different to Paratici. What do you make of that? The fact that he's maybe not somebody for the public sort of addressing. He's more just, we know that he's working behind the scenes, but we're not actually going to really hear from him. Whereas in Paratici's case, we did get to hear from him. Would you prefer that you get to hear from the director of football? Do you care?
No, not really. I feel like the person who you should probably be hearing from week in week out is the manager. He's the person who sets out the team. He's the person who shoulders it falls on. Even though
True.
Conte moaned that why is the director of football not here talking? Why is the CEO? Why is the chairman? And it's like, well, that's just how modern football works, mate. Just get on with it. But I was reading one of the other articles that he was part of. Like he flew out to Greece to sell the Villa project to Matty Cash.
Yep.
And sort of sell it to him. So if that's his role as well, then we heard in the summer how Big Ange was bringing up these players and basically saying this is how I see it. This is how we have now got a vision and a philosophy. So I feel it will be an easy sell, surely, if we carry on how we are. But you still need those sort of players who are sort of people in the boardroom who, because I still feel like our boardroom and our staff members at a high level have been a bit stale and sort of it's getting a bit it's stagnated and there's nothing really happened for a long time now. So you hope that this is part of a shift to get it a bit more lively and energetic, and hopefully like give some change. Because it's one thing to say, we just got to like proof's got to be in the pudding, really, isn't it?
No, definitely. Ash, what do you think? Is that a good thing, a bad thing that he doesn't address the public very much? Did you like it when Paratici came out and sort of spoke? Did you really care?
It's a funny one because I remember Antonio Conte was saying like he was the one who was like, we need everyone to come out. He said everyone used to come out and talk to the press. It wasn't just a manager's job. And I think that's what kind of made the DOF Paratici at the time come out and do a lot of talking. And I think a lot of fans didn't really care that
No.
much. Like
They were
in my
actually
opinion.
mad that it wasn't Levy, I remember,
And
speaking.
that's what it was, yeah. And I think that's where the pressure was going on Levy a lot more. Like, why, in times of adversity, that's when you want to see a Levy come out and say something instead of going into your corner and kind of shrilling up. You need. It's all good you coming out in times of prosperity, in times when things are going good, but you want to see. But anyway, going back to the question, I think, like for me, it's not a big deal. No, I think I'm just doing all the talking. He is a walking PR board. And I don't really need to hear from my guy, if I'm being honest. As long as you get the signings in early, I think most fans will be happy. They're not going to scream out. I think if the signings come later, then obviously people are going to look for someone to blame, and he might be in the firing line if you don't get business done sooner rather than later, in my opinion. But yeah, for me, he doesn't need to come out. No, he could stay in the background. He can stay chilled. Just do your job. Do your job. Do your job. You know what I'm saying?
He doesn't need to be good at everything. He doesn't need to also be like the public speaker. Like that is actually even a role sometimes, right? For like certain, sort of people in the club. Like they are the person that comes out and addresses the fan base because they're good at public speaking and they're good at not mixing up their words or their messaging. They come across the right way, all those sort of good things, right? And if Johan Lang isn't that guy, it's not a big deal. It really isn't. Like, I think Paratici actually was quite good at sort of coming out and explaining. I mean, sometimes
Well,
we didn't learn that much from what he said, but he came across as confident and he came across as like trying his best from what Daniel Levy was basically unwilling to do, right? And Paratici was willing to do it and be that guy for us. And while we complained about it, I did think we sort of needed it, and we didn't get much from it, but we did need it because fans were very upset at the time. They were very, concerned about the direction of the club. So that was part of the reason why I think even Paratici did come out, was sort of like, hey, I'm here to address this dumpster fire of a situation. This is where we're like headed, and this is where I want to be in a few years' time. Maybe Lang just doesn't even need to have those conversations because we're in a much better place now. There's also other people around the club like Ange who already speaks so well as it is, and we're already doing these kind of fan advisory board type of things. Like we're being more transparent, more communicative than we used to be in the past. So this could in a way be like a good thing that Johan Lang isn't, expected to come out and like, speak to the fans or anything like that. But it is something I think that's worth remembering that Paratici actually did do for us and, did kind of provide that sort of clarity when needed. I feel,
I was
yeah.
going to say, there was that one time, though. There was that one time at band camp when Paratici came out here. And he was on his phone. He was like, yeah, guys, I just want to talk about these times. They released something about him leaving his job or something. He didn't even realize it. He had like his hands free in as well. He was talking and he was walking up like it was like bad. I think it was on Android or something. I don't think he had the iPhone connection because it looked a bit wobbly. But yeah, other than that, yeah, I agree. Like I think Paratici's been spot on with his speeches.
Do you think we're going to get Johan Lang on the bench screaming at the players, Ash?
By the sounds of his character, he sounds like he prefers to be behind the scenes.
He'll be sitting next to Levy.
I didn't really like when Paratici was doing that, if I'm being honest. I'm like, that's kind of putting off the players. Like, and I think some of the players came out and said that. Like, shut up, man. What are you doing?
Well, we got a fiery Italian. We don't need another one. Like,
yeah, exactly. I think it's all right. Just stay calm. Know your role.
well, it's a bit like I draw comparisons with like when Ange announced his coaching staff, and it was Millie Jedinak, who was known for being this like strong midfield general at Palace and Villa as well. A lot of Villa connections, and I thought the first couple of games, I'm like, where is he? Why is he not on the bench? Like, and he's kept Ryan Mason on the bench, which makes sense because Ryan Mason is, you know, Spurs through and through. But Jelinek sits up in the stands watching down and collecting the data. So maybe that's like part of it all. It's all these. We're saying it's a lot of cooks, but they're slowly simmering
Mm.
That's
more
it.
than the
I can imagine
fires
it.
going mad.
Yeah, yeah,
This
you're
didn't
right.
get mentioned, but maybe towards the end of this podcast, it might as well be because someone might get mad. But he did do also a pretty decent job with the academy at Villa. And if I do recall,
Jacob Ramsey.
yeah, Jacob Ramsey, or even when we played that under 18s Cup final, who was in the final? Aston Villa, right? They clearly had a pretty talented academy.
Who
And
are the other two as well? Cameron Archer, who they sold.
Chukwuemeka to Chelsea.
Uh, and there's the other guy as well. Who was at. Did they sell him as well? The other Ramsey, Aaron Ramsey, not the
Maybe.
Arsenal one. I think they had like they produced all them. I think they've sold them off now.
They've
Some of
sold
them,
some
but
really talented academy talents. And also, too, like clearly
but
they.
you can tell that's not Johan Lang. That's Monchi and Unai Emery. And Unai Emery's like, I need players now, like more than
Yeah,
these
yeah,
prospects. So that I don't even think that's just Villa like going down the sort of like Villa are basically becoming Sevilla 2.0, aren't they? Like a Villarreal sort of team.
But maybe that's why Spurs brought him over because we have such a talented golden generation coming through right now. And Johan Lang did a pretty good job at being able to promote guys from the academy into the first team. But he also did a good job selling some of those players. Like Chukwuemeka sold for a lot of money.
Yeah.
Cameron Archer sold for like 25 million or something like that. I mean, think about some of the guys that are in our academy right now that are really good players, but might not end up really making it all the way to the Spurs first team. I think, for example, like we have guys like, you know, it might just be unlucky. Like we have Tyrell Ashcroft, who's like a really good center back, you know, in our academy, but we already have like 3 or 4 other really talented center backs, you know, already there. So one of them is not going to make it. One of them's going to have to be sold on for a bit of coin. And we're going to need somebody that's good at that type of thing. Somebody who can, you know, try to promote some of these academy players to other teams around the league. And we can end up being like a Man City or like what Aston Villa have done. Aston Villa, I think while Johan Lang was in charge, they sold like some of their academy talents for like a total of like 80 million or like something like that. I mean, that's just brilliant. Like that's exactly what we could be doing in a few years' time. And it's not even what we could be doing. It's kind of what we should be doing and what we will be doing at one stage. Because like I said, not every academy talent's going to make it. Not all of them are really ready for the first team straight away. Sometimes the opportunities are not even there because you have a Bentancur and a Basuma, you know, challenging in that position. I mean, it's hard to crack ahead of those two. So it's going to be, you know, something he's also going to be in charge of. And it looks like he's actually quite good in that area. And I just thought I'd sort of mention that because I think I might have forgotten it, that he is probably being brought in for that reason too. You know, he has experience with young talents and he has experience with doing very well with the academy. And Aston Villa's, at least from my impression, seems to be one of the more talented academy areas, at least in the Premier League right now. They seem to be doing a very good job at producing regular talents on a regular basis. Any kind of final points on our direction, on our future here, lads, before we wrap things up?
All
Just makes
positive.
sense. Like, it just makes sense now. After like watching the show now and being a part of it, I feel like I've learned a lot.
Do you think Spurs are headed in the right direction, Ash? I mean, you already thought that, but even more in the right direction?
I think even more so now because, like you just said, like great with the academy. We need to work with our academy. He's going to do that. That's working with young players. I think that's what we're doing. We're buying young players. So for me, used to be a coach, worked as an assistant coach at Wolves, so he understands every aspect of the club, like can relate to other people and understands and respects their timing and not too much in your face, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like characteristic wise, like it's and like we said before, he's walking into something that's pretty rosy at the moment. So
Don't rock the boat, Johan. Don't rock the boat. Nothing to rock.
That, man, I'll give it a thumbs up, man. I'm happy. I'll be real.
Any final points from you there, Sonny?
Just positive, always, you know, positive now about Spurs. Yeah, just as I said, I keep reiterating. If it clicks, it will go well. If it doesn't, you won't be hearing from me.
Well, I'll go back to you, Sonny. Please give your channel a plug. Thanks again for, you know, filling in for this podcast, and people will be seeing you quite regularly. And
Yes.
yeah, what's coming up on your channel, sir?
So we have on Sonny Talk Spurs another Johan Lang video. So go and watch that and basically hear me praise it and a bit of criticism there as well. Also got a video with you, Jack, where we basically answer our Spurs fans getting a bit too excited and carried away. I, for one, think who cares? Let's get a bit excited. Let's get a bit carried away. Let's have a good time. But yeah, a few other videos on there, so check them all out. All quite good, fun bits of content.
Love it. Everybody, please head on over to Sonny Talk Spurs. Like he said, check out his own Johan Lang video, a bit shorter than this long discussion we had. Maybe if you don't have as much time to listen to this back. And then, two, do check out his video that I was just on recently where we discussed why Spurs fans should be excited, and there's no shame in it. Ash, thank you for joining me. Southview Coys TV. What's happening over there, my friend?
Yeah, we're actually doing a live in just under an hour. We're doing a bit of a rival show. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the Prem view us Spurs fans. I, for one, will be positive in there. So it'll be interesting to see what they've got to say
Fight
about
the corner.
I will be fighting our corner, tooth and nail. So yeah, man, that's what we're doing next week. Again, we'll be doing more tactical reviews on what's to come ahead with Fulham coming up. I think tonight, actually, you know what? I'm just going to do it. So we are linked with one or two players. So I'm going to go through them with a fine-tooth comb, through some tactical analysis. Just a little bit before we have that rival chat, because some of them are linked to other clubs as well that are on the actual panel. So I think it makes sense. So I'm going to go there. But yeah, man, I'm here for the banter. I'm here for the laughs as well. And come on, you Spurs, man. Thanks for having me on as well.
Thanks for filling in. I thought this was terrific. I'm sad that Dave couldn't join us. I think he would have offered some really good opinions, but you guys did an excellent job. Thanks for filling in. Thanks for helping me out. Please, everybody, smash that like button. Get your comments in down below. Do thank Sonny and Ashmatic as well for joining us on this podcast. I think we will be seeing you. Come on, you Spurs. In the Big Ange we trust. We never stop. See you, everybody.